Um, Welcome everyone. Today inshallah we are going to continue with what we started the last time with chapter number 18 concerning spoilage, rework and scrap. Of course, first of all we defined what do we mean by spoilage, rework and scrap. We said spoilage is the defective units that does not meet the specifications of the final consumer or the good units or the good finished products, therefore, and cannot be repaired also. Therefore, this or these units are considered spoilage. Of course, on the other hand, the rework are defective units also. Also does not meet the specifications of a good unit or the specifications of or that is needed by the final consumer, but can be repaired in order to be sold as good finished goods. And of course, the last concept is scrap, and we said that scrap is the residual material from any manufacturing process. Of course, we started our discussion with spoilage. We said in order to account for spoilage, of course, the main point to account for spoilage or the main reason to account for spoilage is in order to control our spoilage, in order to manage our spoilage, in order to reduce our spoilage. Of course, we said that the spoilage could be divided into two classifications. The first is the normal spoilage. The second is the abnormal spoilage. We said the normal spoilage is because of the normal operations of any manufacturing process. It is or it can be avoided, and it can be it cannot be avoided, it cannot be controlled. Therefore, this is considered a percentage, or this is considered an amount of spoilage that that is agreed upon, or is that let us say accepted within a specific manufacturing process. While as on the other hand, the abnormal spoilage is the spoilage, or is the amount of spoilage that can be avoided, that can be managed, and it is because of the inefficiencies in any, and errors of course, in any manufacturing process. Therefore, we need to understand that we need to do our best in order to reduce the abnormal spoilage, because we can avoid the abnormal spoilage, we can control the abnormal spoilage, but the normal spoilage, we do understand that this is because of the normal operations. Therefore, whatever we do, whatever increase in the efficiencies that we have in the production process, we will never reduce the normal spoilage, because it is because of the normal operations of any manufacturing process. Of course, we said that after this distinction between normal and abnormal spoilage, we said that the normal spoilage should be added, or the amount of normal spoilage should be added on the good units that are produced, while as the abnormal spoilage is considered as a loss that will be presented in the income statement in the end of a specific period. Any questions? Of course, we also started with how we are going to account for spoilage in a process costing system. Of course, in a process costing system, we are going to use the same steps that we have been using before, step number 1 up till 5. The only difference now is or will be in step number 1 and step number 2 and step number 5. The only difference in these steps that we are going to not only be concerned with the completed and transferred out units and the ending work in process units, but also there will be another category that we are going to be concerned with, which is the normal and the abnormal spoilage. This will be the only difference from what we took before in chapter number 17. Of course, we said that an important point in process costing is that we need to designate or determine what is the inspection point. Of course, we said that the inspection point is the point at which units are inspected and deemed either to be good or spoiled. Therefore, at that point, the spoiled units will stop from going through or continue with the manufacturing process. Therefore, the percentage of completion of spoiled units will equal the percentage of the inspection point itself. Of course, this point, or after considering the inspection point, we can start with our procedure, or we can start with our calculation of costs for the good units and for the ending work and process. Let us see an example that considers process costing. As we can see, Anzio company manufactures a recycling container in its forming department. Direct materials are added at the beginning of the production process. Conversion costs are added evenly during the production process. Some units of this product are spoiled as a result of defects which are detectable only upon inspection of finished units. Therefore, the inspection point here in this case is at the 100% point. Why? Because we are inspecting, or it is detectable, these defects or these spoiled units are detectable only upon inspection of finished units. Therefore, the inspection point is at the 100% point. After this, normally, spoiled units are 10% of the finished output of good units. Therefore, 10% will be considered as normal spoilage in this case. That is, for every 10 good units produced, there is 1 unit of normal spoilage. Of course, we said that most of the reports and most of the books, they present the normal costing, they present the normal spoilage as a percentage of good units. Why? Because we cannot have any good units if we do not have any normal spoilage. Therefore, they present the normal spoilage as a percentage from good units. Therefore, the 10% here is from good units. That means that we are going to have 10% of good units as normal spoilage. Summary data for July 2012 are as follows. Of course, they gave us some of the information or some of the data that we need. Work in process and beginning inventory 1,500, 12,000 as direct materials. Of course, 1,500 units, $12,000 as direct materials, $9,000 as conversion cost, with total cost of 21,000. Of course, the degree of completion of these units were 100% and 60%. That means that 100% were worked in the last period, which is June, I think, yes, June, and 60% also of the conversion costs were worked or were added in June also, or in the last period. Started during July, 8,500. Therefore, we have total units to account for, 8,500 plus 1,500, which is 10,000 units. The good units that are completed and transferred out during July is 7,000, and the ending work in process is 2,000 units. Therefore, as we can see here, we have 7,000 plus 2,000, therefore 9,000. Therefore, as we can see here, the total units to or that has been accounted for is only 9,000, while as to account for is 10,000. Therefore, the 1,000 is or would be considered as spoilage. Therefore, the 1,000 units, which is the difference between the total units to account for and the total units accounted for, is the spoilage that we are going to introduce in this example. Therefore, we have 1,000 as spoiled units. Of course, the degree of completion of the work in process is 100% for the direct materials and 50% for the conversion costs, which were added in this period. Of course, we have, as we can see here, the normal spoilage as a percentage of good units. This should be considered always, that this percentage or 10% is of good units. And then they gave us the degree of completion of normal and abnormal spoilage. Of course, as we can see here, 100% is the degree of completion for the normal and the abnormal spoilage. Why is it 100%? Because we said that the inspection point is at the end of the production process, therefore it is at the 100% point. Therefore, any spoiled units that were inspected or that were deemed or that was deemed to be spoiled went through the inspection point. Therefore, they have went through the 100% point. Therefore, they should have been completed fully by the direct materials and the conversion costs. Any questions? Of course, this is the data. Let us now see how we are going to use the procedure, or how we are going to use the 5-step procedure in order to calculate the good units and the ending work in process and the abnormal spoilage costs for this data, or for this period. Let us start with the weighted average method. Of course, as we can see here, step number 1, to account for 10,000 units. Accounted for 10,000 units. Of course, these 10,000 units are 7,000 which are started or completed and transferred out during the period. 2,000 is the ending work in process. Of course, we said that we have 1,000 as spoiled units. But we need to consider what is normal and what is abnormal, correct? Of course, we determined that we have 1,000 spoiled units, but now we need to determine the normal part and the abnormal part. So what do you think would be the normal, and what do you think is the abnormal? 900 is the normal and 100 is the abnormal. How did you get the...
We are taking it from the good, 10% of the completed and good...
Good units, yes.
Good units were 9,000.
How 9,000? The 2,000 here, the ending work in process, did they reach the 100% point? Did they reach the inspection point? Therefore, I do not know whether these units are good or not, because they are not inspected yet. Therefore, we should not consider the 2,000. We need to consider only the 7,000. Therefore, 7,000 multiplied by 10% would equal 700 units. Therefore, as we said, that the 10% is from, or is a percentage from good units. Therefore, we need to multiply this percentage by the good units. So how many good units do we have? Of course, we said that the 2,000 were never, or they did never reach the 100%. They did never reach the inspection point. Therefore, they are uninspected. Therefore, if they are not inspected yet, therefore, we cannot say that they are good or not good. If they are spoiled or not spoiled, we do not know because they are not inspected yet. But the 7,000 which were completed in this period were inspected in this period also. Therefore, the 7,000 were deemed to be good units, multiplied by the 10%. Therefore, we have a normal spoilage by the amount of 700 units.
In the case where the inspection was in the 50%,
we are going to consider, yes, we are going to consider various points of inspection points, inshallah, just at the end of this lecture, inshallah. Therefore, up till now, the 7,000 are deemed to be good in this case. Therefore, the 7,000 multiplied by the 10% is 700 units. And of course, we are going to see what if the inspection point is not at the 100%. What if it is at the 50% or the 80% or the 40% or the 20%? Will we be calculating the same number of units if we have different inspection points? Let us see. We are going to see this, inshallah, at the end of this lecture. As we can see here, the normal spoilage is 700. And of course, if we calculated that the normal spoilage is 700 out of 1,000 spoiled units, therefore the abnormal would be 300, which is the completion of the 1,000. Therefore, as we can see here, the normal spoilage is 700 and the abnormal is 300. This is the only difference from what we took before, is the addition of this category, the normal and the abnormal spoilage. That's it. Now, step number 2, calculating the equivalent units. Of course, we are going to calculate the equivalent units for the completed and transferred out, for the spoilage, and for the ending work in process. Of course, because we are using the weighted average method, therefore we are we are not going to separate between the work or the costs that were incurred in previous periods and this period. Therefore, we are going to multiply 7,000 by 100%. We are going to multiply the 7,000 by 100% for the direct materials and for the conversion cost, because these are completed units. Therefore, it took 100% of the direct materials and 100% of the conversion cost. Therefore, the equivalent units for the 7,000 would always be 7,000 and 7,000. For the normal spoilage, also the normal spoilage, we said the spoiled units would have taken 100% of the direct materials and conversion costs. Why? Because the inspection point is at the end of the production process. Therefore, they would not have reached the inspection point unless they took 100% of the direct materials and 100% of the conversion cost. Therefore, also 700 multiplied by 100%, 700 multiplied by 100%. Also the same for the abnormal spoilage, 300 multiplied by 100% and multiplied by 100%. For the work in process ending inventory, the 2,000 have taken 100% of direct materials, because the direct materials were added at the beginning of the production process, while as it took only 50% of the conversion cost. Therefore, 2,000 multiplied by 100%, 2,000 multiplied by 50%, these are the total number of equivalent units. 10,000 for the direct materials, 9,000 for the conversion cost. This is step number 2. As we can see here, not of a big difference. There's not a big difference between what we took in chapter number 17 and chapter number 18. The only difference is the introduction or the presentation of the spoilage in step number 1 and step number 2. In step number 3, we need to summarize the cost to account for. Therefore, as we can see here, these are the costs of the beginning inventory, and these are the costs that are added in this current period. Of course, the total cost is as follows: 88,500, 98,100. Step number 3 does not have any difference from what we took in chapter number 17. Step number 4, also no differences. Of course, we are using the weighted average. Therefore, we are going to divide the total cost by the total equivalent units that were for the work done, whether this work done was in this current period or in previous periods. Therefore, 88,500 divided by 10,000, 98,100 divided by 9,000. These are the costs per equivalent units. Now, step number 5, the only difference in this step from what we took in or previously in chapter number 17 is the addition of calculating the cost of normal spoilage and the cost of abnormal spoilage. Of course, the normal spoilage would be added to the good units, would be added to the cost of the 7,000 units that were completed, while as the 3,000 or the abnormal spoilage, which is the 300 units or the cost of the 300 units, would be presented on a separate line in order to be presented on a separate line also in the income statement, while as the ending work in process would be calculated as before. Therefore, the assignment of cost, step number 5, we are going to start with the 7,000 units. Of course, the 7,000 units would be 7,000 multiplied by the costs. Of course, the 7,000 which we calculated in step number 2, the 8.85 is the cost per equivalent unit that were calculated in step number 4. Of course, the same for the conversion cost. Therefore, we have 138,250. This is the direct cost, or not direct, but let us say the cost of manufacturing the good units. Now, of course, we need to add the normal spoilage on these units. Why do we add the normal spoilage? Because we would not have these good units unless we have some sort of normal spoilage. Therefore, we are going to add the normal spoilage cost onto the 138,250. Therefore, what is the cost of the normal spoilage? We know that the normal spoilage had 700 equivalent units for the direct materials, 700 units for equivalent units for the conversion cost. Therefore, we multiply these equivalent units by the cost per equivalent unit. As we can see here, the cost of the normal spoilage is 13,825. And of course, this amount or this cost will be added onto the cost of good units, which will equal now 152,075. This is these are the costs of the good units. These are the costs that will be transferred from this department to the next department, or these are the costs that will be transferred from this work in process account to the work in process account in the next department, or even in the finished goods inventory if this is the last department or the last process. Now the abnormal spoilage, of course we calculated that the abnormal spoilage would have 300 units or equivalent units for the direct materials and conversion costs. We can multiply now these equivalent units by its costs. Therefore we have 5,925 as the cost of abnormal spoilage. This cost will be considered a loss that will be presented in the income statement. At the end, the ending work in process, we have 2,000 units. Therefore, the 2,000 units were calculated in terms of equivalent units, 2,000 for the direct materials, 1,000 for the conversion costs. These multiplied by the cost per equivalent unit, we would have 28,600. These are the costs of the ending work in process that will stay, that will remain in the work in process account for this department and will be carried from this period to another or to the next period. Therefore, as we can see here, the total cost accounted for would most definitely equal the total cost to account for. Any questions? Therefore, the only difference is the addition of these units, or the units of, or the spoiled units in step number 1, 2, and 5. Any questions? Let us consider now the first in, first out. As we can see here, step number 1 is the same as the weighted average. The only difference is that in the first in, first out, we are going to consider that first of all, we are going to complete the 1,500 and then start and complete the units or the units within this period or within this current period. Therefore, as we can see here, the 7,000 will be presented as 1,500 and 5,500. 1,500 that was started in the previous period and finished in this period. 5,500 started and completed within this period. Therefore, these are the 7,000 that were considered in the weighted average method. Now, we are going to continue as normal. We are going to consider the normal spoilage, 700 units, as calculated before. Abnormal spoilage, 300 units, also as calculated before. The ending work in process, 2,000, of course, according to our example. Of course, now we are going to calculate the equivalent units. Of course, here in the first in, first out method, the calculation of equivalent units will be according to the work done in this period, only in this current period, not all the work done on these units. Therefore, the 1,500 took 100% in the last period, therefore in this period it took 0%, therefore 0 equivalent units. In the last period, the 1,500 took 60%, therefore in this period it took only 40%, therefore 40% multiplied by 1,500, 600 units. Now, according to the 5,500, they all started and were completed in this period. Therefore, they took 100% of direct materials and 100% of conversion costs in this current period. Therefore, 5,500, 5,500. The same as for the normal spoilage, the abnormal spoilage, they took 100% in this period, 700, 700, and 300, and 300. These are the equivalent units according to the work done in this period. Of course, the work in process ending, of course, also 2,000 units took 100% in this period, therefore 2,000 units, and took 50% only of conversion cost, therefore only 1,000 units. Therefore, as we can see here, we are going to move along, or let us say, use the procedure according to an important assumption that all the 1,500 that were started in the previous period will be deemed to be good units. Therefore, as we can see here, the 1,500 all were considered as good and completed, correct? Therefore, this is under the assumption that all the beginning inventory that were started in the previous period were good units, and nothing in this or nothing in this category were deemed as spoiled. This is a simplifying assumption, of course, because if we do not assume this, we are going to consider that part of the 1,500 will be also spoiled, and then it will get complicated, or the procedure of calculating the cost would be more complicated. Therefore, we are going to go through these steps according to the assumption that the 1,500 will not have, as beginning inventory, of course, will not have any spoiled units. Of course, now let us go to step number 3. No differences here. Step number 4, of course, no differences also. But here in the first in, first out, we are going only to consider the costs that were incurred in this period. Therefore, we are going to take the 76,500 and the 89,100, not the total cost of 88,500 and the 98,100. Of course, divided by the equivalent units. Of course, these equivalent units are for the work done in this period. Therefore, these costs, $9 and $11 are the cost per equivalent unit. Of course, in step number 5 now, the same thing. We need to calculate the cost of the 7,000 units. We need to calculate the cost of the normal spoilage and add it to the 7,000 units. We need to calculate the cost of the 300 units as abnormal spoilage, and we need to calculate the cost of the 2,000 units as ending work in process. Therefore, as we can see here, the good units that completed and transferred out the 7,000 units, first of all, in the first in, first out method, we are going to consider the 1,500. The 1,500 costs that were incurred in the previous period were 12,000, 9,000. While as the cost to complete these 1,500 units in this period would be, of course, 0 multiplied by $9 and 600 equivalent units multiplied by $11. Therefore, 6,600. Therefore, the total cost of the 1,500 good units that were completed and transferred out is 27,600. Now, the 5,500 units, of course, took 100% of direct materials and conversion costs in this current period. Therefore, 5,500 multiplied by 9, 5,500 multiplied by 11 would be $110,000. Of course, if we do not have any spoiled units, we would have been finished by now, because the 110 plus the 27,600 would be, or would have been, the cost of the good units that were completed and transferred out. But now, because we have spoilage, because we have normal spoilage, the part of the normal spoilage should be added on to the good units that were completed and transferred out. Therefore, what is the cost of these units? Of course, 700 equivalent units multiplied by 9 and multiplied by 11. The cost is 14,000. Adding up the 27,600, the 110,000, and the 14,000 would give us the cost of the 7,000 units that is completed and transferred out. Now, the abnormal spoilage, of course, 300 units. Of course, 300 equivalent units for the direct materials and the conversion cost multiplied by the cost per equivalent unit, $9 and $11. $6,000 would be the cost of abnormal spoilage that would be considered as a loss and presented in the income statement. At the end, the ending work in process, 2,000 units, of course, 2,000 equivalent units for the direct materials, 1,000 equivalent units for the conversion cost multiplied by the cost per equivalent unit of $9 and $11. Therefore, the cost of the ending work in process would be 29,000. Therefore, if we have spoilage, we need 3 things to be calculated The first is the completed units, or the completed good units, by the amount now 151,600. These are the cost of the 7,000 units. We need to calculate the cost of the abnormal spoilage, which is the 6,000 units, and we need to calculate the cost of the ending work in process, which is the $29,000. Any questions? Therefore, as we can see here, not a big difference between what we took in chapter number 17 without spoilage and what we took in chapter 18 with the spoilage. Any questions? Of course, the journal entries now would be, first of all, to consider the finished goods that has been completed. Of course, as we can see here, the finished goods inventory would be debited, and the work in process of that department would be credited by the amount, of course, 152,075 if we are talking about the weighted average, or 151,600 if we are talking about the FIFO. Of course, at the end, we need to also consider the cost of the abnormal spoilage. We need to take the cost of the abnormal spoilage from the work in process and designate it or determine it as a loss from abnormal spoilage. Therefore, the loss from abnormal spoilage would be debited, and the work in process of the forming department would be credited by the amount of the normal spoilage. Of course, as we can see here, the differences is because of the use of either the weighted average or the FIFO method. Any questions? Therefore, we need now to consider 2 points before finishing the discussion about process costing and spoilage. What if spoilage have a saleable value? What if we could? Of course, according to our example, the spoilage were costs that could not, or let us say units that were not, or that could not be sold. Therefore, they do not have any saleable value. Their saleable value or realizable value are 0. But what if we could sell these spoiled units by, let us say, a fraction of the cost, or by a small relative value? Will be there any differences from what we did? Of course it is immaterial, but do we consider it or we do not consider it? And if we consider it, how we are going to consider it? You are correct. Therefore,
Maybe it will be a reduce of the
excellent.
of the goods, or
The spoilage itself, excellent, excellent. Therefore, if the spoiled units have a saleable value or a realizable value, this value will be will reduce the amount of spoiled costs. Will reduce the amount of spoiled costs. If, for instance, if we have spoiled costs by the amount of 10,000, and these spoiled units were sold by the amount of 1,000, therefore for us the cost of the spoiled units will be 9,000, not the 10,000. Therefore, if we have a saleable value, we are going to reduce the spoiled cost by the amount of the saleable value of the realizable value of these spoiled units. Any questions? Now, the second point that we need to consider in process costing: what if the inspection point is not at the end of the production process? What if, let us consider the same example of Anzio, I think, manufacturing company. Instead of having the inspection point at the 100%, let us consider it to be at the 55% or the 20%. Of course, as we just saw, the cost of the normal spoilage were added to the cost of the completed units. Correct? As we just saw, the costs of the spoilage or the normal spoilage were added to the cost of the completed units, the 7,000 units. Why didn't we allocate some of these costs of the normal spoilage onto the ending work in process? Again, as we can see here from our example, whether the use or under the use of weighted average or the FIFO, the total cost of the normal spoilage were allocated, let us say, or were added up onto the good finished units. Correct? As we can see here, the 14,000 were added up onto the 7,000 units. Why didn't we take or consider that some of these costs will be added on the ending work in process? Do we need to consider that there might be an allocation to the ending work in process? If yes, why? And if no, why?
No, because it did not reach the 104. The efficient cost is 100.
Excellent. Excellent.
Reach for this inspection.
Excellent. Excellent. Therefore, these 2,000 units were not inspected. And we said that the normal spoilage is 10% from good units. Units that were deemed good after the inspection point. Therefore, the 2,000 units were not inspected. Therefore, we will not allocate any of the normal spoilage onto the ending work in process. But what if the ending work in process have, let us say, reached the inspection point and moved forward than the inspection point? Do we allocate some of the costs of the normal spoilage onto the ending work in process? Of course, we said that the normal spoilage is a percentage of all good units, whether they are completed or considered as ending work in process. Therefore, they will be allocated, or the amount of normal spoilage would be allocated onto the good units, whether these good units are finished or not. Any questions? Now let us consider.
I have a question.
Yes. Yes.
About
Yes.
we say that it's a reduction of the spoilage cost.
Yes.
Is it for a normal spoilage?
The total spoilage. The total spoilage. Yes. يعني it will be a reduction to the cost of the 1,000 units, whether they are normal or abnormal.
When we want to journalize it or boost it to the ledger,
Yes.
we will where it will be in the
We are going to reduce the work in process, or we are going to reduce the costs that are within the work in process for this specific department by realizing, let us say, the realizable value or the saleable value of these units.
and all of it in the work in process.
Of course, these costs were already have been incurred and already were debited in the work in process, correct? Now, if these costs should be reduced, therefore I'm going to credit the work in process for this specific department, correct? And on the other hand, I'm going to recognize the saleable value for these spoiled units as an inventory.
When we saw the journal, there were work in process.
We did not have any saleable value for the.
No, if we have.
If we are going to recognize another journal entry.
A portion of it, like 300 and 300.
If we have a saleable value, for the spoiled units, therefore the amount of or the cost of the spoiled units will be reduced. Yes. Therefore, the normal spoilage that we are going to add up onto the good units and the abnormal spoilage that will be considered as a loss will also be reduced. This amount, how we are going to reduce this amount? By reducing the work in process and realizing or recognizing the saleable value as, or the realizable value of these spoiled units as an inventory. وضحت ولا ما وضحتش؟
أنا قصدي إنه صح إحنا عندنا اللي هي journal entry الabnormal loss والabnormal.
تمام، ممتاز جدا. هذا القيد راح يضل زي ما هو.
يعني هذا مش راح يكون فيه deduction.
راح يضل زي ما هو كقيد، لكن القيمة راح تنخفض. ما دام أنا هو أنا في النهاية إذا أنا خفضت كامل التكاليف اللي هي تبعت إيش؟ تبعت 1000 وحدة، بغض النظر هل كانت 700 ولا 300، هل كانت خلينا نيجي نحكي 800 وحدة ولا 200 وحدة، أنا خفضت إيش مالها؟ كامل التكاليف. فبالتالي بكل بساطة أنا الآن راح أجي أعترف إنه أنا قيمة التكلفة اللي كانت موجودة، يعني أنا الآن بكل بساطة كانت هان مثلا 10,000، ال 10,000 هذه وزعتها بناء على 700 وحدة و300 وحدة، صح؟ الآن راح تبطل 10,000، راح تصير مثلا 9,000، ال 9,000 هي اللي أنا راح أوزعها على ال 700 وحدة وال 300 وحدة، نفس الطريقة اللي كنا نوزعها. لا، الوحدات راح تضلها زي ما هي، لكن قيمة الوحدات هذه هي اللي راح تنخفض. تمام هيك؟ بعدين بكل بساطة يعني القيود اللي احنا تو شفناها هي راح تضل، لكن القيمة هي اللي راح تنخفض. تمام؟ يعني أنا هذه التكاليف راح تنخفض وهذه التكلفة راح تنخفض برضو. طبعا في المقابل راح يكون في عندي قيد إضافي هان اللي هو معرفة أو يعني الاعتراف بتخفيض اللي هو الورك بروسيس أو التكاليف اللي أنا تكبتها في هذا الحساب، أو بدي أشيل هذه التكلفة من هذا الحساب اللي هو الورك بروسيس للفينش او للفورمينج ديبارتمنت. تمام؟ وبدي اجي اعترف بالسيلبل فاليو از ان انفنتوري، لانه انا ححط السبويلد يونتس على جنب على اساس اني انا بدي ابيعهم، فبالتالي راح اعترف بانفنتوري للسبويلد يونتس بالقيمه البيعيه لهم، فبالتالي راح يكون في عندي قيد ايش ماله ثالث.
يعني انا قصدي انه نسبه على 800 و300، مش انه احنا مثلا نخلص الافضل.
لا، تخفيض التكلفة أو راح يكون على إيش؟ على كامل التكاليف إيش مالها للوحدات الديفكتيف أو السبويلد يونتس. تمام هيك؟ وبعد هيك راح التوزيع، لما يصير التوزيع بلا شك راح يخفض قيمة تكلفة ال 700 وحدة وتكلفة اللي هو إيش ال 300 وحدة. تمام هيك؟ Now let us consider what if we have more than one, or let us say not more than one. Of course, we could have more than one inspection point. But let us consider what if the inspection point was not at the 100%. Of course, as we can see here, we have different scenarios. At the 100%, which is the same as what we took just now. But what if the inspection point is at the 55%? Or what if the inspection point was at the 20%? The best thing to, in order to understand what will be the differences here in this case, is that we are going to answer the following question. What are the units that were inspected in this particular period? If I could designate or determine what are the units that were inspected in this period, therefore I can know what are the number of units or of good units, correct? And then we can consider or calculate what would be the normal spoilage from these good units. Therefore, as we can see here, we said according to our example, we had 1,500 as beginning work in process, correct? We had 5,500 started and completed, correct? And of course we have 2,000 as ending work in process. And of course we have 1,000 as spoiled. These are the output of the units. 1,500 plus the 5,500, 7,000, 7,000 plus 2,000, 9,000 plus the 1,000, 10,000. These are the units to account or that were accounted for. Now, in order to calculate the normal spoilage and the abnormal spoilage, of course, we said that the normal spoilage is a percentage of good units. Therefore, we need to determine what is the amount of good units. And we cannot determine the amount of good units or the number of good units unless we answer the question that were just stated. What were the units that were inspected in this particular period? Let us consider the 100%. Of course, according to the 100% inspection point, therefore the inspection point is at the end of the work in process, correct? Therefore, the 2,000 ending work in process, were it inspected? Was it inspected in this period? The ending work in process have started in this period and stopped at the 50% or the 50% of completion, correct? Therefore, did it reach the 100%? Did it reach the inspection point? Was it inspected in this period? It was not inspected. The 5,500 started and completed also in this period. Therefore, if it is completed, therefore they reached the 100%. Therefore, they reached the inspection point. Therefore, they were inspected. The 1,500, the beginning work in process, were started in the previous period. And in the previous period, they stopped at the 60%. Therefore, did they or were they inspected in the previous period? Therefore, they were inspected in this current period. Correct? And of course, the 1,000, if they are deemed spoiled, therefore, they must have been inspected. Correct? Therefore, these are the number of units that are inspected. The 1,500, the 5,500, and the 1,000. In order to calculate the normal spoilage, we need to multiply the 10% by the number of good units. Not all units inspected, but only the good units. What are the good units? Which are, of course, the 1,500 plus the 5,500, which are the 7,000, plus the 1,000, which are 8,000. These are the total number of units that were inspected. From these total number of units that were inspected, 1,000 are not good. They are spoiled. Therefore, minus the 1,000. Therefore, 10% multiplied by 7,000, which is the 700 that were calculated before. Any questions? Now let us consider the 55%. The same procedure. Let us determine first of all how many units were inspected. Of course, the 1,000, if they are deemed to be spoiled, therefore they are inspected. Correct? The 2,000 ending work in process, the ending work in process has stopped at the 50%, correct? Therefore, were they inspected in this period? They were not inspected in this period because the inspection period or the inspection point is at the 55%, but they stopped at the 50% point. Therefore, they were not inspected. The 5,500 started and completed. Of course, they are started in this period and completed in this period. Therefore, in this period, they were inspected in full. Therefore, the 5,500 inspected. The 1,500 beginning inventory, they were inspected in not in this current period, but in the previous period. Therefore, they were not inspected in this period. Therefore, the normal spoilage would be 10% multiplied by 5,500, 6,500, minus 1,000, which is 5,500 multiplied by 10%. Therefore, the good or the normal spoilage here in this case would be only 550 units. Of course, if the normal spoilage is 550, the abnormal spoilage would be the completion to the 1,000 units, which it would be 450. Let us consider the last scenario here. If the percentage of completion is at the 20%, of course, they are spoiled, therefore, were deemed spoiled, therefore, they were inspected. Let us consider the 2,000 ending work in process. The 2,000 stopped at the 50%, therefore they were inspected in this period. Therefore, the 2,000 were inspected. They are inspected units. The 5,500 started and also completed, therefore inspected in this period. The 1,500, they reached to the 60% in the previous period. Therefore, they were inspected in the previous period. Therefore, inspected in the last period, not in the current period. Therefore, as we can see here, the normal spoilage would be 10% multiplied by only the good units. Of course, we have the total units that were inspected, 8,500 minus 1,000, which will equal 7,500 multiplied by 10%. Therefore, the normal spoilage would be 750. Of course, if this is not clear enough, you could draw the following diagram. The 1,500 starts from the 60% and is completed. The started and completed by the amount of 5,500, of course, will go from the 0% up till to the 100%. And then the work done on the 2,000 units, which is the ending work in process, from the 0 up till the 50%. Of course, as we can see here, if the inspection point is at the 100%, therefore only the 1,500 and the 5,500 would be inspected. While as if it is at the 55%, only the 5,500 would be inspected. As we can see here, the intersection only with the 5,500. While as if it is on the 20%, the inspected units would be the 5,500 and the 2,000 units. Therefore, if you have problems in designating or determining what is the inspected units, you can use always this diagram. Inshallah, we are going to continue with the discussion of spoilage the next time. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time, inshallah.